I'm going to talk to you today about my knitting because I have bored my partner and my mother and my nearby friends about what I'm knitting, and so now I'm going to talk to you about it because I've just come home from working away on a film for about 4 or 5 months, probably only 4, but it feels like a lot longer. And when I do that, normally if I have an extended period of time at home, my desire is to jump into lots of the projects I've been thinking about while I've been working away and have been unable to start them. And this generally ends up with a lot of half-started things and frustration and not finishing them and like throwing them aside when they aren't going right. That's if they are sewing projects. If they are knitting and yarn-based projects, generally I only take on quite small ones, so there's a better chance of them getting done. But even so, I still had 4 different projects all cast on at the same time the other day, and very much wanted to cast on a 5th. It was only a very small one, but a little bit of order needs to come in, so I'm going to talk about them and then hopefully that will spur me on to finishing a few of them so I can concentrate on the more long-term projects and actually get on with the sewing projects I need to get on with for work or personally for myself. But that's going to have to wait a little bit because I've been working away. Both of my sewing machines have been rather ignored in that time, so my industrial needs servicing just because my industrial needs servicing about once a year to keep it running nicely anyway. And my beloved Benina, which is a 1008, suffered an accident on a job in the winter last year. It fell over when I was getting in and out of my car. And that's damaged something internally in it, so the sewing machine man's going to need to have a look at that as well. So I can't really start any big sewing projects while they're in the states they're in. I've got some little sewing projects going on. I've got a camisole that's sitting up there that I want to copy because I use it as a vest and a corset cover in everyday life anyway, and it's starting to get a bit worn out because it was secondhand in the first place. This rather marvellous disco Vader fabric over here is awaiting to become a very overdue present for someone. And arranged before me, although you can't see them, is all my knitting projects, so, and one crochet project. So I'm going to go through with you today what they are, just because I love talking about them, and you're the only people that are going to have to listen now. First up, most excitingly, are these socks. Now these are a pair of socks. If I hold them that way up, they might be more recognisable as socks. I've just turned the heel and I'm about to start working on the foot. These are from the Squids School of Vintage Knitting, which is a Patreon that I've joined back in May when these socks were the pattern of the month. And that's how it works. You join up on Patreon at various different levels, and every month you get an adapted or vintage inspired pattern worked out by the owner of the school, Sydney, and they're really interesting patterns. I've been tempted to join for a couple of years now while it's been running, but these socks were what pushed me over into the edge. She's called them the Great Paxford socks, which I believe is inspired by the TV series Home Fires, which I haven't watched, but they are also based on an original pattern from the 1940s, possibly between 1943 and 1944, by Weldon's, and they are socks designed to be made from they are socks designed to be made for using up your odds and ends. So the pattern has this pattern, I'm not sure about the original pattern, has 5 different colours, but you can work it with up to 7 different colours and maybe even down to like 3 different colours depending on your yarn quantities. And I think it's partly because the initial image for the socks in the Squid School of Vintage Knitting pattern was very much my sort of autumnal colour tones that pushed me into going, I want them. And as you can see, mine are very, very autumnal. But this is just a really interesting pattern, and the original 40s pattern is was designed to be knit in the round and in the flat and then seamed up. Pausing here to say Retro Claude has made a whole video about this sock pattern and how to make them, and has the pattern for sale in her Etsy, link to it in the description below. Sydney has adapted them to be worked in the round or in a magic loop, and I am finding out that her pattern is written very much assuming that you're knitting with the magic loop. I am not a magic loop knitter, so I'm doing it on 4 needles, and yeah, there's a couple of things that I'm struggling a bit with the pattern, and I've probably ended up knitting them a bit more like I would knit my normal socks for my normal sock pattern. But this is only the first sock, and hopefully on the second sock maybe I can have better go at following the instructions closer, or perhaps not, perhaps I'll always knit them using my adaptions because I am not very good at following patterns faithfully. It only got as far as the cuff of the sock and I already started to change what it said. I've made mine longer, much longer here than the pattern said already, just because I know I prefer a longer sock there. They're a really beautiful pattern. I don't know if it has a name, but it's just called the textured stitch in the instructions. And although it looks really complicated and is a fabulous way of using up different colours, it's not Fair Isle. You're working in one colour at a time in each row, so that's really good for me because I'm very much a beginner when it comes to colour work. Yeah, I'm really delighted with them. So that's project number 1. Project number 2 is another pair of socks. In fact, this is the first sock. This is the first sock, and it's nearly done. They're adult sock, and they're knitted in Drops Nord Unicolor, and that's a everyday comfort in alpaca and wool. So they were picked for a friend to be a very soft, comfortable pair of socks. And actually, I think I've got one row left to go, and then I've got the Kitchener stitch to do, and that's the first sock that will be done. Now, admittedly, I think I cast these on sometime late July, and of course I need to do the second sock. This year I made the decision that I needed to knit socks for other people in between every pair of socks I knitted for myself, because I've also decided that I only want to wear socks that I've knitted and all the socks that I already own until they wear out. But I'm not going to go buying socks anymore, which is not a difficult decision, to be honest. I don't think I've bought socks in quite a while, because I have quite a tight colour palette and preference for, you know, hard wearing and woolen socks. That's not, you know, unless you want to spend lots of money, that's not very easy to find. And then if you're going to spend the money on them, you might as well buy the yarn you want exactly and knit them yourself. But I'm trying to be less selfish in the socks and knit other people, so these are for somebody else. But since starting these, I've also knitted 2 pairs of socks for myself, and I'm about to cast on a little pair of baby socks for someone as well. So I need to carry on and finish this pair and knit the accompanying pair, because these are for 2 friends of mine and I'm knitting them socks each. I've already knitted them 2 pairs of socks this year, but they're getting some more. They know they're getting some more, so I've got to get on with that. And then I need to knit some more socks for me. Then I can knit some more socks for me. If I knit this pair, the second pair, the baby socks, and the Paxford socks, I can then knit some ordinary socks for me. And I already have some yarn for that as well, which is either this beautiful skein, which I've lost the bit of paper for, but the skeins come in 2 sock lengths, so you can get the colours matching the same. So I'm either going to knit them, or possibly, where's my other ball of wool? Another pair of socks in this wool, which is Drops Fable yarn, which is a self-striping sock yarn. I've already knitted myself 1 pair of them and I really love them, in exactly this colour, and I can just about squeeze out a pair of ankle socks out of 1 50-gram ball if I'm really careful, or if I'm not careful I have to do a contrast heel and toe, because that's what my last 2 pairs of socks for me have ended up like. Alright, so that's project number 2. That just needs the Kitchener stitch and then obviously casting on the second sock. The next project is a crochet project. I am entirely self-taught when it comes to crochet, thanks to the internet, and not even from people showing me, because I didn't seem to be able to learn to crochet from people showing me directly in front of my face, and I certainly couldn't master it from a book. I did eventually manage it from watching videos over again, which, yeah, that's somebody showing you, but it meant I could just go back and go over and over again till I got it. I can only do 1 stitch, which I don't know what it is, because there's a difference between UK and American crocheting terms. So I think the only stitch I can do is a single chain and a chain stitch. Yeah. But some places I think call that a double, but it's not an English double crochet, I think. Anyway, you could see in the video that I'm crocheting, and it's best you don't think about what it is. But what I'm making is a crocheted uterus. Not anatomically correct. I've made these before. I made them for some friends of mine when we were all working together, and it was something to do when I was in my digs in the evening, and I couldn't do sewing in my digs because they were an old situation. So all I could do was darn socks, knit or crochet. And watch too many episodes of dreadful procedural TV shows from what I remember. Anyway, the crocheted uterus with fallopian tubes and ovaries, not anatomically correct. There are lots of patterns for these out on the internet. I looked at some of them and then ended up making my own because I'm self-taught with the crocheting. I can't follow the instructions, so it just involves starting with a little magic loop and then making a little tubey bit and then increasing to make the body of it and then decreasing with some wadding stuffed inside and decreasing till it sort of seals off at the top, and then the two little fallopian tubes are made separately. They look a lot better once you've sort of steamed them a bit. And then I made them with the idea of them being pin cushions, or maybe sort of a reverse version of an ill wish. So, you know, maybe if your uterus or your hormones aren't treating you that good at the moment, maybe you could look after it and treat it really nicely and care for it, and maybe yours will feel a bit better. Or equally, if yours is treating you terribly and it's just making you upset and hurt and cross and angry, you can shove pins in it, because you can't shove pins in your own or in your body, but you can shove pins in this. So yeah, so technically this one, my first crocheted uterus is done, but that incredibly bright pink cotton was only bought with this job in mind, so I'm just going to keep crocheting them until they're done, or till the yarn is used up. So there you are, that's the crocheted uterus. I was all inspired by a friend's daughter who crocheted an anatomically correct heart, and it was beautiful, and I was like, I could take that and do something with it. And there is loads of anatomically correct crocheting out there if that's the sort of thing that interests you. Again, because it involves following a pattern, it's not for me. But I do find crochet, because it's a bit quicker than knitting, is quite good for making three-dimensional shapes, because you can just do a bit and see if you get the shape you want, and if you don't, it's quite easy to unpick. Oh, I've just spotted what my hair's doing. It's quite easy to unpick back and do a bit more until you get the shape you want, whereas knitting takes a bit longer. But I have sort of done three-dimensional, slightly anatomical knitting before, to make similar things that I won't be sharing on the internet. But yeah, so I have done sort of three-dimensional. I've knitted dolls and teddies and similar things before without really following instructions. I've just sort of knitted till I've got the shape I've wanted. I knitted a Feagle once from the We Free Men, which I really enjoyed. Although his clothes were fabric, his body was made out of knitting. And I think I might have looked at a knitted doll pattern, but then I put pipe cleaners in his limbs so they're sort of flexible. But anyway, yeah, so that's what the pink yarn is for, the pink crochet cotton. It's not crochet cotton, but the pink cotton is for. Alright, shall we move on to the next project? Project number 4, and the final one on the needles. I actually posted a picture of the colours for this on Instagram, thinking people might guess what it's for, because to me it's so obvious. And you can see it's only just started, but it didn't get anywhere. But it's a season 18, so Tom Baker's final year as the Doctor, 1981 scarf. So this was when his costume design went through a complete overhaul, and June Hudson created a new design, which involved just 3 colours. So you've got the rust, or the orange, which is very similar to the orange in the original Doctor Who scarf, and then you also have a lovely burgundy red, which I've gone with Cardinal from Jameson's, and then a purple, and I've also gone with Jameson's, and once again in the colour Clover. Is it called Clover? Yes, Clover, which is the same as in my other Doctor Who scarf. Now, the big difference in my project is the fact that I'm knitting it in wool, double knit Jameson's wool, exactly the same as my other scarf, when the original was knitted in chenille, and I didn't want a chenille scarf. It's my project, it's my scarf. I wanted it in wool. So it's going to come out slightly smaller and perhaps a bit more delicate than his, because his was the longest scarf, I think the longest scarf yet. There might have been one in the middle somewhere, season 14 or season 16 or 17, that may have been, I think they grafted 2 scarves together, which may have been longer than my original scarf. So yeah, so I actually want mine to have a slightly, I want it to be more feminine. I don't want it to be oversized, a little bit like Romana when she dressed up in the style of the Doctor rather than actually as the Doctor in Destiny of the Daleks. But I also want to wear this in a sort of very Victorian, or, you know, I want to wear it with my Victorian clothes. So I want it to be slightly thinner and elegant, but yet still long enough that I can double it around my neck at least once and have it hanging nice and long. And the pattern is slightly different from the other one, and this will feature in a video all of its own where I'll go into the actual construction details. But my scarf, as you can see, is only just started. I'm going to start introducing the second colour, which I can't see from my pattern from here what it is. I think it's the lovely cardinal red. This is the nicest colour of all 3, because I'm not really a purple person at all. And orange, I am an orange person because orange goes so well with brown, but in reality, yeah, I just think the one that really appeals to me is this gorgeous red, although it's not a colour I really wear, but there's just a richness to this, that's something. So anyway, so that's a project that has going to have its own video in its own right as I work on that, although I can't see how it's going to be much different to the other Doctor Who scarf video I made, except there's a much more regimented way the pattern, the colour changes go. There's always a crossover where, but anyway, that's for the other video. So that's my 4 current projects. I want to, as I said, I want to start a little pair of baby socks that I really need to get on with while the baby is very small and they're quicker to knit, so I better be casting that on soon. And then my next project, when all of those are done, except possibly the Doctor Who scarf because that will go on for a while, I knitted some samples earlier this year in cotton that I'm quite pleased with the samples, although I think I'm not that keen on knitting with cotton, so I also did a sample in wool which involved less contrasting colours, just the one, and I quite liked that. And these are to make 2 1940s vesties or dickies, or they're not full jumpers or even full vests, they're just the front. I'll show you the pattern. And then they're designed to be made into like a little cotton, you make a cotton net vest, which is the back and the sides, and then you just have the knitted front, and then you wear it under a suit, and it's presumed that, you know, you'd never take your suit jacket off, and so that you would carry on wearing this, and it would save you knitting and save you on yarn and coupons. For more information on yarn and coupons, you can look at Retro Claude's videos. So yeah, so it was like fashionable in the it was essential in the 1940s to make garments out of as little as possible because there was rationing. And so if you only had to knit the front of your sweater and you were never going to take your jacket off because you were in an office or work environment where that wasn't something you did, or, you know, it was cold and you didn't want to take your jacket off, then these were perfect. So because I bought off the wonderful Bella of Rouge a tweed suit earlier this year, I just thought, you know, with all the yarns I have, they're all the perfect colours to create these vesties. And yeah, and so I could practice wearing them with my suit, because my whole point of me buying a suit was that I thought you only need one outer garment, the skirt and the jacket, and then you just need five garments next to the skin to get you through a week. I'm thinking about when I'm working away from home and I need to pack less. I'm always jealous of when I saw people that wore suits that only had to pack 5 shirts to get them through the week and maybe 2 ties. So I could get through a week with a vestie, a jumper and some blouses, and my packing would be reduced greatly. Yeah, so these samples, both in the cotton and the wool, were just to see how they knitted up and what they look like. And I've also found somewhere I can buy some of the cotton net from the cotton sort of bobby net. I don't know if it's bobby net, but anyway, the sort of that bit, the back of the jacket, the back of the vest is made out of. There's also a Fair Isle style one which I tried knitting in the yarn exactly as the pattern described, and it came out very much smaller than it intended. So I would like to make the Fair Isle version as well, because I am allergic to Fair Isle, but I would like to get better at doing colour work. But I think we'll start on the spotted square style because, to be honest, it's easier and you only have to, it's very similar to the socks in colour work where you're mostly only working with one colour at a time and you're slipping and dropping stitches. No, you're slipping stitches to create the pattern. But then again, I am saying that from memory, and maybe when I go back to the instructions it'll be more complicated. Anyway, that's my next project after all of the ones that you've just seen are done, except for possibly the Doctor Who scarf. And now I think I've probably bored you enough. So I'll just quickly talk about the other projects I want to start. I already mentioned the Disco Vader fabric and the camisoles out of lace, but also downstairs I've got drying a Hessian sack that I've washed. I know, attractive. I really want to have a go at making rag rugs and like Victorian inspired rag rugs, really out of rugs. I don't particularly want to do a pattern, I just want it to be rags. But being me, I want them to be wool rags, so I have started to save some wool scraps up. Whether any of them are suitable yet, don't know. We'll wait and see. So that's another project of mine to start. What else have I got on the go? Well, actually, then I have my enormous out of view from here. I have an enormous pile of mending. So far, I've done one item of it since getting home, and I've been home for 2 weeks now. But in that time, I have also been to probably more dentist appointments than anyone should go to in 2 weeks, and I've also got a doctor's appointment and an optician's appointment coming up. Anything else? No, that's all of those. And I've also been half-heartedly cleaning the house. I only ever half-heartedly clean the house, but you can see out of the sitting room windows at the moment, and it's greatly improved things. I did dislodge some absolutely enormous spiders and webs to do that. I washed the kitchen curtains. I discovered that one of them still had a pin in the hem. I've washed these kitchen curtains before, so they've obviously been washed with the pin in the hem twice. And dislodged more spiders from there. And I'm considering making some curtains for our sitting room because the ones that are hanging up there are looking very sad, and they have been there since we moved into this house. For that I have some very large Sanderson fabric, so it looks a bit Christmassy. It's like poinsettia roses on a green background, which is not very me, but it's a very bold, large fabric, and it could only really be a curtain. So I think that's... I did once upon a time imagine making 1830s or 40s dresses out of them, but it's not that sort of fabric. So curtains I think it will be. Plus I do actually have a proper job I need to be starting as well, which I've just got the measurements for, and that's really exciting too, because that's 16th century, and again I think that might feature in a video of its own in some way. So on that note, I will stop boring you and wave you goodbye, and hope you have a lovely rest of the weekend and a nice time working on your own projects. What are you working on? Tell me in the comments. Bye!